and welcome back to the channel. I am the Dark Light Emissary, and today's episode is on the Drukhari, or Dark Eldar, the cousins to the Craftworld Aeldari. Now, this faction is by far probably one of the most gleefully evil factions in the entire setting. They are evil distilled, and as I go over this overview, you will see a bit of why that is the case. Just as I mentioned in the last episode regarding the Craftworld Eldar, the Drukhari are very, very old. Older even than the Craftworld Eldar societies. One of the most single important things to know about the Drukhari is that they are the true Eldar in a sense. And what I mean by that is there is no real physical difference between them and the Craftworld Eldar. You saw them next to each other, out of armor, and other signs of allegiance at a baseline level. But the societies and culture of the Drukhari has remained unbroken and unchanged since before the fall of this society. The Dark Eldar are a society of nightmare. They are the remnants of what caused the downfall of their people, with Slaanesh being born, caused by the psionic emanations due to the intense pleasure and pain most people were engaged in, and the hedonistic lifestyle culture prevalent of the time. After Slaanesh was born and destroyed much of Aeldari society, large parts of what remained of it were already living in the webway in hidden domains and cities. And in their arrogance, they never once regretted the fall and continued on in their same twisted ways, deriving pleasure from pain and other base desires. Now, due to being in the webway, which is in the warp in a sense, but separated by the barrier of wraithbone it is made out of, the effects of Slaanesh on the souls of the Drukhari is dampened, but not gone. And over time, the souls of each individual Dark Eldar is slowly being leached by She Who Thirsts. To avoid that fate, the Drukhari found that they could torture others in their stead, and the psychic energy expended in the pain could feed Slaanesh in their place. This also seemingly rejuvenates Dark Eldar, keeping them functionally immortal as beings. So not only are they a horrifying society, but they are also immortal and torture other living beings to survive. They are probably at or near the top of my list for species I would never want to run into if I ever found myself somehow in this galaxy. They are a culture built upon raiding and slavery, and so they go out of the webway through the many portals that connect them to real space to seek out fresh prey to bring back to their slave pens to be used as fuel, so to speak, to keep them going that much longer. Many worlds have fallen victim to consistent raiding by these forces. The majority of Dark Eldar live in a gigantic solar system-sized city spanning a portion of the webway called Kamarag. This city is steeped in perpetual darkness, both spiritual and literal, sprawling in every direction, wrapping up and around again in the depths of the webway. There are giant witch cult arenas, as they are called, where slaves and Eldar alike battle to the death daily for ravening masses and for personal honor and pleasure of the witches themselves. Deep in the darkest corners and deepest crypts of the city are the homunculi covens. I consider the homunculi basically the foundation of what the Dark Eldar are. They are masters of torture, pain, and terror, but they also are scientists with depthless knowledge of depraved and also lost technological and biological processes. While as a whole, Dark Eldar society is as cutthroat as it gets, with rival factions vying for power and assassinating each other at will, most organizations bow to the homunculi and do not challenge them directly, for their knowledge and danger is too much to ignore or defeat. Most homunculi, oh my goodness, I'm having trouble with that word, don't necessarily even truly look like Aeldar anymore, or are even in their original bodies. They're notoriously hard to kill and have many backup bodies or plans in place in case a rival tries to take one of them out. An example of this is in the Path of the Dark Eldar omnibus books, where one of these is assassinated, only for his soul to transfer to a body of someone who he gave a gift once to. The device activated and forced the soul out of the body, replacing it with the homunculi instead. Most of them don't even look similar to each other, each a bespoke nightmare of altered flesh and intent, and all of them very ancient, some of them possibly the oldest living Aeldari in existence. Some that may have even founded the original pleasure cults at the beginning that led to their downfall. Important things to note regarding this specific faction in the Dark Eldar: the Emperor's Children apothecary Fabius Bile has studied with them before, gaining their knowledge for his own experiments, and such is the experience of some of these beings. At least one or more has been secretly brought to the Golden Throne itself by the Imperium to help shore up failings in its unknowable ancient systems. What was given in exchange for their esoteric knowledge and assistance in this matter is unknown. If one of these comes along on a raid or into battle, it often will be tailed by a retinue of tortured horrors and other monstrosities it has experimented on from prisoners to do its bidding. Most of Drukhari society is ran in an aristocratic fashion, with great noble houses ruled by an archon at its head. And each of these noble houses vie viciously with each other for power and prestige. There is no tactic too low to try in this society. Sometimes it is darkly humorous, like presenting a gift to a rival archon, and it turns out to be a miniature black hole device that pulls them in, or a deadly poison provided by an allied homunculi coven. Basically, if you think of a devious plot, chances are it was used in Kamarok somewhere at some point. You think of like Looney Tunes level of ridiculousness to some of the plots. The Dark Eldar are gleefully willing to try basically anything to one-up themselves over their rivals. The Dark Eldar regard their species gods that fell to Slaanesh, unworthy of worship or respect, due to being, in their eyes, too weak to defeat the Chaos God. And within their civilization, they really only seem to respect Kaela-Mensha Kane for his murderous aspect, as is befitting this people. They seem to have a somewhat healthy respect for Kegarak, though, and his servants, the Harlequins, as well. And I will briefly touch on the Harlequins here, right now. Harlequins are not loyal to anyone but Kegarak, the laughing god of the Eldar. And since Kegarak relies somewhere hidden in the webway, it would make sense for the Dark Eldar, who also reside there, to not want to anger a living god of their species that resides in the same overall domain as them. Kegarak is rumored to know every single existing path in the webway, and his Harlequins are all superlative, nigh on supernatural warriors in combat. Harlequins basically appear and disappear at will within the webway, with the knowledge of their patron god guiding them. Harlequins are apart from all societies of the Aeldari in general, but they are the only faction respected by all of them. So Harlequins are frequently seen in the Dark City, often visiting to mediate between rival factions for unknown reasons, sometimes to the parties involved. They often can be used to mediate between Craftworld Eldar and them, since the Craftworlders see the Dark City society as a reminder of what damned their species to begin with. I will one day perhaps do a brief overview, or a direct overview, directly on the Harlequins, because I think they deserve a smaller, more specialized video on just them. They're a unique and fascinating faction in the setting as a whole. One of the near universal rules followed in Dark Eldar society is the banning of psychic abilities. Unlike their Craftworld cousins, who rely heavily on psychic power still, the use of psychic abilities is too risky in drawing the attention of the god that covets their souls. And the city has strict and gruesome punishments for those who disobey this one command for all members of the city. As such, Dark Eldar have mostly atrophied as a psychic species. As far as population goes, most Dark Eldar are born in amniotic tubes, not through a true natural birth, due to the long gestation times of a real birth. The ones that are born naturally are seen as trueborn, and are the true nobility of society. The rest being used as manual labor, slaves, cannon fodder, you name it. Notably though, some members of the lesser classes, through cunning and viciousness, do reach the highest levels of power. First amongst those, at the moment, being Astrubal Vect, who started life as a slave, and eventually has become the single most powerful ruler of the Dark City. I won't go into him in this video, he deserves his own, but I figured it's just important to note here. I will briefly go over a few other main factions present in the Dark Eldar. First, we have the Succubi, who are also called Archites. They run the witch cults, and each one is a lithe, attractive figure, sinuous and powerful and fierce in look, but their beauty is skin deep, and within lies an avarice and fierceness unmatched. Not much can hope to fight a Succubi. or one of their witches in the arenas and survive. These are some of the best melee combatants in the entire setting, so even out of the arenas, if they are deployed in combat, not much is going to challenge them in a straight-up duel. One of my personal favorite factions is the Incubi, or as they are known individually, Incubus. These warriors are tall, intimidating, professional, dedicated soldiers. They worship the war god Cain in his most murderous aspect. Aesthetically, these warriors tower above other Eldar, and they have a blade and temperament to match. Their armor is clad in spikes and blades, and usually black. And while they much like the rest of their society do not know what mercy even is, they are, unusually, very trustworthy warriors, such as their discipline to qualify as an incubus. Due to their superlative warrior ability and their unusual level of honesty and trustability, they are highly valued by archons and other leaders and factions in the Dark City as bodyguards and mercenaries. You don't have to worry about them possibly backstabbing you. One interesting note regarding the Incubi is that their main champion is a being known only as Drazar, the Master of Blades and Executioner and champion of the entire order. This warrior is seemingly on the level of someone like Karn, and I would love to see those two fight one day. It would be a fascinating battle. A somewhat long story short, Drazar showed up unannounced at a shrine of the Incubi in armor ancient and senior in look from their order, and killed or maimed any who challenged them as they approached the throne of the Incubi. Drazar challenged the current hierarch or leader of the Incubus to a duel, and dispatched the hierarch in only a few minutes, which shocked the rest of the present that witnessed it. Due to the martial nature of this order, Drazar could have sat the throne of the dispatched hierarch, but chose not to. For unknown reasons, it should be added. Drazar doesn't sleep, eat, or speak, and no one has seen them take off their helmet or any part of their armor, so their identity is unknown. They are suspected to be the fallen Phoenix Lord of the striking Scorpions Aspect Warrior Shrine of the Craftworlds, Aura. The story says that Aura fell to chaos, but that seems like an odd turn for any Eldar, to me at least, since as depraved as Dark Eldar specifically are, they know the risks of worshipping chaos. One could argue that if this is even possible, that Drazar embodies either murder in excess for Slaanesh, or killing in a worship of Khorne, but I don't know that this is true, because this person, this fallen Phoenix Lord, is said to have founded the Incubi as well, and the Incubi don't seem to worship any of the Chaos Gods. In fact, they seem to only tastedly worship Cain, the war god of the Eldar. Whatever is the case with Drazar, when I first learned about them, I found them super awesome and want to see more of them. They have achieved feats like killing an entire Hive City's defenders, and even taking on and killing 3 members of the Adeptus Custodes at the same time, which is a ridiculous level of ability. The only certainty here is that if you challenge them, you will die, unless you are Karn, probably. One of the most horrible version of Dark Eldar are simply known as Raks. A Rak is a Drukhari modified willingly by the homunculi into a terrible new and nightmarish form. Enhanced with unknowable chemicals and replacing limbs with claws and other implements, or even extra arms, each Rak is a unique abomination. Somewhat related to these are grotesques, which are made more out of punishment by homunculi instead of volunteers, and these are towering monstrosities of muscle and bone. One of the most unique factions in general, and related to the Dark Eldar, are the Mandrakes. What these beings truly are and how they came to be is unknown. What is known is that if you see a shadow, you should fear it, because Mandrakes can come out of anything casting a shadow, and one of their nicknames is called a living shadow. Their skin is blackness, and their hair a bone white. They strike without warning and murder their chosen targets quickly. Their skin has coiling green Aeldari runes that signal destruction crawling all over them. Their only garb is flayed skin from those who betray dealings with them. True nightmares from the dark given form is what these guys are. They own a part of the Dark City, which is covered in a miasmic eternal darkness. Unless you are invited, it is certain death to go into the domains of the Mandrakes. The most notable member of this faction is Drukhari, quite the name, the Decapitator. His lair is lined with thousands of skulls, and from his victims. And once this man targets you, you might as well somehow try to avoid all shadows for the rest of your life. Notably, Vulcan, Primarch of the Salamander's Legion and Chapter of Space Marines, actually had a confrontation with him on his travels in the Webway during the Heresy era. The mainstay of the main armies of the Dark Eldar are the Cabalite Warriors. Each one of the Cabalites are a great and fearsome warrior, clad in black, bladed armor. Notably, their armor has internal barbs that penetrate deep into their own flesh, making them sharper in awareness due to the constant pain. Much like the rest of this culture, pain is at the heart of it, even for its own warriors. Last but certainly not least is the Talus pain engines. These things are also made by homunculi. Basically, imagine a hulking prisoner outfitted with a mobile torture device, torturing it, goading it into a raging, killing spree, its arms ending in talons or claws or whatever else a homunculi deigns to outfit them with. Like with most things like homunculi make, they can be bespoke, individual-looking machine flesh nightmares, sent out to inflict damage to chosen enemies of the covens. They also work as guardians for their masters, and they also have the ability to harvest parts of their victims for use by their masters in experiments. And that is a brief overview on this faction. There are quite a few awesome stories involving this faction, like the time the Space Marines staged an invasion of Kamarag, or how Vect became ruler, or ways he dispatches his rivals in creative ways. But as always, I do not want to go too deep into these, as they are meant to be a bit of a shorter overview. When I first got into this universe, I didn't really like the Dark Eldar that much. I found their edginess kind of off-putting, and their aesthetic sort of boring at first. Almost like a reskin of the Craftworld Eldar before I really understood what they were. They aren't my favorite faction, but I like the subgroups in them, like the Incubus for their looks, and I do like how insane the homunculi are. And I can really recommend the Path of the Archon omnibus. You get a really great overview and a bit of depth to how messed up and weird Kamarag is as a deathless, crazy city. As always, please like and subscribe if you'd like to see more. Please leave a comment on the video and request a future video if you'd like, or simply correct me or discuss with me on the topic of the video. I love to do that. Bring your light into the dark places, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you, and have a great day or night, wherever you are.